Guys, Derek here. Today what we're going to do is take a look at my AI setup, which I've actually set up on this ThinkPad. I've taken one of my old PCs sitting here at the office and I've converted it into a whole AI system. I'll show you all the tools I've put together, how I'm using it, and some of the ideas I have. I don't think it'll necessarily be a production use for me, but it's something I thought, to really understand how these tools work. It's kind of cool to get into the whole open source community. In the open source world, that's where I kind of got my start, learning things through PHP, through CRMs like Sugar CRM, and vTiger and many other CRMs as well is kind of where I got my start in the open source space, not to mention a lot of the open source languages that are out there too. So we're going to explore a little bit on AI and how that could work in the open source world too, and by setting up a ThinkPad that is actually in my home basement, set up in a whole mini data center. So here we are. What I'm going to do, I'm going to show you a little bit about the technical setup that I have here. By no means, as a CEO or business owner, do you actually need to go and configure all this. It's kind of cool to see a bit of the back end though. That way you kind of know what's going on. For me, what I love about this is that I can do this open source. I can tinker, I can learn, as I mentioned earlier. But what we can do here is we can bring in all kinds of open source tools. What you're looking at here is Portainer. This is an open source tool that allows me to actually interface with another tool called Docker. What Docker does, it lets me easily install software packages on the ThinkPad server. So I have everything from Open WebUI, which is like ChatGPT. I'll show you that in a second. I also have things like Espo CRM, so that's an open source CRM that's out there that I've also configured on here, amongst many other things that I've set up too to kind of create my AI stack. So the first one I'll walk you through is that, the ChatGPT, Claude interface. This is the open source version. Now, what's the difference between this and say something like ChatGPT? Well, ChatGPT, let's be honest, has a massive data center, massive GPUs, massive processing power. So it can do a lot of complex reasoning. Whereas if you're doing something more basic, you can do this primarily on a local LLM. You're not going to want to do really complex reasoning on something like this. But if it's like really rudimentary workflows, very basic stuff, this is actually really good. You can use this to create agents to actually do some very simple tasks without having to go and use tokens and create things that you would on the cloud. However, with that said, it might be more cost effective from a time perspective to actually get one of those tools. But from a tinkering, have some fun and play around perspective, that's what I'm going to do. Is we're going to try this out today. So on here I have Mixtral, and what this is, I'm allowed to give myself the opportunity to just talk to my AI agent that's sitting in the basement back home. So I can go in here and just say, what is the distance between Calgary and Vancouver, and just hit enter. So now it's talking to the AI back in my basement at home. I'm at my office, and here it is just giving me a quick answer. Again, this is a very simple question, but you can see it actually does give me pretty well detailed information you'd expect to see on something like ChatGPT. So from there, I can continue the conversation. I can start a new conversation whenever I want. I also have other models loaded in here as well, like Qwen is another model in here. There's other ones from Meta that has Llama on here as well that we can use. So there's lots of different tools and models rather that we can bring in and have conversations with. And you'll see it just popped up now. It's actually giving me some follow-ups, which is kind of neat. And you'll notice Claude's really good at this. ChatGPT will do this as well. It'll offer you suggestions to continue the conversation. So the local LLM is also doing the same thing too. So how long does a flight take? So we can just click on that and it'll just ask the question for us. So it's kind of a cool little way to experiment and try things out. So that's on the AI side of things with Open WebUI, which interfaces with all kinds of LLMs. Now, if I hop back into another tool, which is NAN, if you ever use make.com or Zapier, this is another way of using automation. And this is actually an interesting thing. A lot of CEOs and business owners that I talk to mistake that they need an AI agent to solve a problem. A lot of the times it just has to be something like a workflow tool, and NAN is a great way of doing that. And what you can do is you can actually create a workflow and you can call in an AI agent when you need to. So for example, we could have a trigger on a workflow monitoring an email box. So when emails are coming in, we actually take action. So when we take action, we then read the email, and we can pass that email to the AI to say, is this customer angry? Is this customer happy? What's the sentiment of the email? Which then might allow us in the workflow to decide what kind of path. We might say if they're really angry, we might want to escalate this to somebody right now. But if they're happy and it's just a general inquiry, then we can just have another workflow that automatically responds to them. So that's not necessarily just handing it off into a dark black hole to an agent. It's actually using workflow, just like you should be designing any business process in your business and doing that inside of a workflow tool and using AI to help support that. So that's how I'm using N8N to create this. And this one's just a very basic example that I have on here. Is I have a timing trigger that goes at 6 a.m. and then it'll pull in a request to pull in the weather in this case. Then I read the news. It aggregates the information. I then send the news articles which is from Google News. It'll throw it into AI, and then the AI LLM will actually summarize it for me instead of a very lengthy news report. I'll just get a very summarized version with some bullet points in it. And then I have another request at the end, which actually send me an email with that. So that's kind of a cool way of doing that. And that's N8N you would do that in. So there's a bunch of other tools in there. And as I mentioned, like I have on here, this is just an open source CRM that I've been playing with. I decided to install on here so you can just have like a basic CRM inside of your AI stack. Because now what I can do, because it's also on the same server, I can easily have the AIs or N8N talk to the CRM and actually do work within it. So now I've really created a contained environment that's secured that the outside world can't get to other than through a VPN, which I'm using a tool called Tailscale to do that. So that's another cool way to kind of factor in how you can actually create and really coordinate your own AI stack within a ThinkPad server.